Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This webinar is brought to you by Strategies 2.0, a statewide collaborative funded by the California Office of Child Abuse Prevention. Today's call is Family Resource Centers plus Community Schools, a critical partnership. This call today is scheduled from 10 to 11 o'clock. I am Carrie Collins, today's facilitator, and my role today is to introduce the topic and presenter, keep track of time, and help the presenters and participants in any way that they may need. In a moment, I will introduce the presenter to you, but I first would like to cover a few webinar guidelines. Like I said, this webinar is approximately 1 hour long, and that's going to go very quickly. So in order to limit outside noise, I have muted all of you. But we do encourage you to interact, and I will show you a few ways that you can do that. So all of you have this toolbar right here with the little red arrow. Hopefully you've joined us through audio, either your microphone and speakers with voice or telephone number that also gave you a number, an access code, and a PIN number. So in order for me to unmute you, you will have had to have entered that PIN number. So either you click on telephone or you click on mic and speakers. We do have a chat box down below, and we encourage you to use that chat box to enter any comments that you have or questions that you may have. And just to test that this is working properly, if you would like to put into your chat box maybe where you're calling from, the organization that you work with, something so that I know that you are here with us today, if you want to go ahead and do that. Oh, good. We have an Anaheim, Santa Barbara. So I'm assuming that our sound is working okay. We've got somebody from Orange County, Huntington Beach. This is great. Oh, Calistoga. Madera. Yay, Madera County. We love you up there. Great. So the chat box is working, and apparently our sound is working really well also. So we ask you then that you could submit any questions that you may have in there. Raise your hand. I will manage your muting. Just so that you know, today's presentation will be recorded, and within 48 hours, you will receive the recording and any resources that may accompany this training today. So it is my pleasure to welcome our presenter for today. Deanna Niebuhr joined the Partnership for Children and Youth in 2004 and directs the Community Schools Initiative. In this role, Deanna leads PCY's efforts to create a state-level policy framework supportive of the development and sustainability of community school implementation at the local level. Among Deanna's areas of focus is the building of a statewide network of community school advocates and stakeholders. Deanna also oversees PCY's targeted technical assistance work with local communities to initiate and grow community school partnerships. Prior to joining PCY, Deanna worked with adolescent girls in a group home and non-public school setting. Later, as an analyst for Alameda County's Social Services Agency, she worked on child welfare policy issues at the county and state levels. Deanna has a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of California, Berkeley, and a master's degree in public policy from the Goldman School of Public Policy at UC Berkeley. We are very honored to welcome Deanna Niebuhr as our presenter today. So I will now turn the screen over to Deanna. And hopefully she will be with you. Oh, let me unmute her. Deanna, I need you to enter your PIN so that I can unmute you. Hopefully she can hear me.
I'll send it to her again.
Okay, thank you, Lita. I know we had you up there. I got disconnected and it won't let me call back in. Okay, Deanna is texting us. So let's hold on for just a moment, and maybe we'll just have her click on her computer button instead of the phone button and see if that, oh, there she is. Now I can unmute you. Okay, are you there, Deanna? Okay.
I am here. Okay, here I am. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I took a breath to speak and my phone disconnected.
Of course. That's just fine. So I've turned the computer over to you as the presenter, and there you are. Perfect.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Of course, technical difficulties. So I'm really excited that there is so much interest in this topic. We're going to focus on community schools and what they are, but this really important critical partnership, focus in on this partnership between Family Resource Centers and schools. So I'm Deanna Niebuhr. I'm the Senior Director and I over the community schools work at the Partnership for Children and Youth. And you can see from this slide that I work for the Partnership for Children and Youth, but my big project is the development of the California Community Schools Network. There's a little logo at the left-hand bottom corner of your screen. That's an information sharing network for folks like you to understand how community schools work, what's working in your community, and to talk with each other. So I really want you to encourage you to look into that. There'll be a website at the end of the PowerPoint. And then I'm also going to leave this screen up for a bit so that you can write down my email address. There's a few things that I will reference as I present this information. The PowerPoint itself is really just an outline for the things that I'm going to talk about, but there's a few resources and materials that we'll try to follow up with you, but also if you want to follow up with me, please don't hesitate to email me. So hopefully you got my email address down, but we can make that available to everyone. Okay, so what we're going to do today is talk about what community schools are, but especially in a California context. And this may be review for some of you, but hopefully we're going to nuance this a little bit to understand what we're talking about in California. And then we'll run through some best practices, and these are really principles of practice or systems change, the ways that we should be partnering between Family Resource Centers and schools. And then I'm just going to run through, because it's always of interest, some funding and other resources, and then we'll have a lot of opportunity for questions and answers and some discussion. Okay, so starting with the definition of community schools, and I think it's really important to point out that the community schools approach is an overarching strategy, not a program. And we're borrowing this definition from the Children's Aid Society in New York City. They run the National Center for Community Schools. And so we talk about community schools as a strategy for organizing or aligning all the resources in a community around student success. And I just want to point out here that I think it can be confusing that we call it community schools, so you think it's just something happening at schools. But for this process to happen, for the partnerships to happen so that you're aligning resources, really happens at the school district level, at the community level. So that can be confusing, and I think it's just important to kind of underline that for folks, that the real work is happening at the schools, but there's some real work that's also happening at the systems level. So also from the Children's Aid Society, just to kind of give you a more pictorial understanding of what community schools are, they start with this idea that everyone working together in schools to make sure that students are successful starts with a whole child concept at the center. So thinking of all the needs, developmental, physical, social, all those needs that we need to address for children in school to make sure that they're successful. And then seeing that child as part of a family, and then also a part of the community that they live in. So I think that won't be unfamiliar to folks on the phone, but just that's really the center of this idea. And then the different components or places where you'll be providing these supports and opportunities is in the core instructional program, and then also expanded learning, so what happens before school, after school, and summer learning opportunities. And then also the one that we get a lot of focus on is the comprehensive support services, which Family Resource Centers play a big role in bringing to the school site and connecting families to services. But the important thing about community schools is where all of these things interact, so that they're all of the kinds of supports and opportunities that we're bringing to the school site and all the partners involved. The point in community schools, or the real special sauce, is the fact that everyone's working together, that these things are integrated, and that's really the difference. So in a California context, we're still talking about whole child, and I'll talk a little bit more about maybe making a change to this center and the way we think about it. But in California, I like to think about changing where we put these different elements of a community school and putting the strong instructional core at the foundation. So really thinking about, in California, the opportunities that are provided for doing community schools are all set up around LCFF provides a new opportunity, so that much more control over, or decision-making power over, the funding and what schools are doing with their funding. And then also a really strong movement towards equity in education, the whole child concept that LCFF backs in legislation, and also a movement to develop positive school climates and to reduce punitive discipline practices. So the difference in California, I think, is the chance to make use of these opportunities to really do school reform, which people don't really like to use that word, but community schools is a whole school reform approach. And rather than just thinking about bringing supports and services to schools, it's important to think about the role that the schools play and the kinds of changes they need to make and what they bring to these partnerships. So putting that strong instructional core at the foundation of this triangle and thinking of that as the starting place. So there's two big focuses that I like to think about in terms of, if you look at the bottom of the triangle and say school districts and schools have a strong role to play, need to lead the work, there's some foundational work that schools are really responsible for, and that partners need to understand so that they know what their role is and what they're supporting schools to do. So a big one is family engagement and our understanding of family engagement. And that is that the research shows that for family engagement to make a difference in student success, it really is about teachers and each child or each student's family having a partnership with their own child's teacher. So a big role for teachers to play in this, and a great need for capacity building, not just for families to partner with the school and understand the school, but for teachers to partner with families. So this is a big job that schools have. And I'll just point out here that that the research behind this and the thinking behind this is captured in the U.S. Department of Ed's dual capacity building framework, which we can make available to everyone so that you have all of that information. And then the second big bucket that school and school staff really have a great deal of responsibility for is building a nurturing and supportive school climate. So so that's a context where I think making sure that we're not just focused on supports and services, but what is the school's job in these kinds of partnership is really important for in a California context. So also in this triangle, I like to think about, if we're thinking about family engagement in a different way and the role of teachers in community schools in this more central way, to think in the middle of the triangle, when we're thinking about whole child, thinking about the fact that to ensure student success, there needs to be a partnership between the teacher, the student, and the family, this triad, and all the other folks that are working around a community schools model are supporting this triad, this relationship to happen. So that's kind of at the heart of the things that we're going to be talking about today, understanding that context. Okay, so the purpose of a community school, and I pulled this purpose actually from a presentation that I did on family resource centers, because this is also the purpose of family resource centers, to ensure that all students and their families have what they need to be successful. And I thought this was sort of a great chance to underline why family resource centers are so important in a community schools effort. Really, the purpose of a family resource center and the purpose of doing community schools work is one and the same. And then I just want to also underline what I was saying before too, that in a community schools approach, that it's very easy to get focused on providing comprehensive support services, which is really critical to supporting our families and students, but also that we want to make sure that we don't end up heading down to a deficit model, that we're also understanding that we're providing opportunity for students and families. So just underlining that. Okay, so I think most of the folks on the call should know what an FRC is, but I thought we might as well run through kind of what an FRC is so that we're all on the same page. And the first bullet says that it's usually a nonprofit, a community-based organization. And I just want to say here that there is a great deal of interest in school districts, among school districts, for providing support services and understanding family resource centers. So this presentation really is both for family resource centers that are run by schools, but also those that are community-based. Really the sort of the rules of working together apply whether the school district is the fiscal or the agency running a family resource center, or whether it's a separate community-based organization. The ways that you work within a school are the same. And I really want to underline here, too, for those of you that are a separate community-based organization, there is a great deal of interest among school districts, and part of what I do is go to school districts and talk to them about family resource centers and see that there is a lot of interest there. And I really want to encourage folks that are in separate agencies separate from school districts to reach out to your school districts, knowing there's interest there and you have an expertise to lend, and offering that partnership to your school districts, because we certainly don't want school districts creating family resource centers when there's already a family resource center in the community. Okay, so just to run through, family resource centers provide a safe and accessible space for students and families. They're focused on prevention and early intervention, and providing comprehensive services and supports with a strengths-based approach, and that ultimately they're connecting families to skills, resources, and opportunities. And then some other terms for family resource centers. Some are called neighborhood centers at schools, often called student and family resource centers. And in some cases, school districts are calling their resource centers just student resource centers, and this may be more typical in a high school. But all apply. Okay, and then the big focus of what we're going to talk about today is in this relationship between FRCs and schools. What are the best practices? And these are really principles of systems building. So just in summary, we're going to talk about the fact that FRC should be integrated into the everyday functioning of the school, bring a prevention and strengths-based expertise, play a central role in engaging families, and contribute to a centralized information system and evaluation process. And then these kind of relate to each other, but then I'll talk in the end about what some important points about what a deep and intentional partnership looks like. And I'll also emphasize that even if there isn't an actual FRC on a school site, if you're just satelliting, that doesn't matter. It's the partnership and the nature of the partnership that matters. Okay, so to start, FRC should be integrated into the everyday functioning of a school. And that means that the FRC staff should be on planning teams. So if there's a school site council or a school site planning team, a planning team that's talking about how to do family engagement or school climate, your voice should be part of that team and bringing the expertise to that team. And this includes, especially if a school is doing a needs assessment, if your perspective can broaden the reach to families and also the kinds of information that's being gathered in a needs assessment, you really have an expertise to bring to those teams and a point of view to help planning move in a more whole child, strengths-based, early intervention kind of way. And then the heart of the relationship between a family resource center and a school is that a family resource center staff sit on a multidisciplinary team. And this team should function as a team that all the service providers work together to do case management in one setting, in one time, so that we don't get duplication of efforts, and that all the supports and services that are being provided or discussed are coordinated together. Now, this team should be relating to the teacher team, the student study team, and if you have a very few service providers, maybe the Family Resource Center is the only partner at a school site, then you should be on the student study team if there's not a separate multidisciplinary team. So there's a lot of information about how these multidisciplinary teams should function. I really want to encourage you to reach out. You may be the expert who knows that there needs to be a team, and I really want to encourage, if that's true at your school site, that you lend that expertise to the school and help the school develop a multidisciplinary team if it doesn't have one already. And the importance of this is not just duplicating efforts, but also you really get beyond just co-location. You're really trying to move beyond just adding a family resource center to a school site, and there you go. Working as a team really makes a difference in making this a real part of the school and connected to what's happening in the classroom. So in that team and in all of those ways that I just described, a Family Resource Center staff person is bringing the expertise around prevention and a strengths-based approach to that team, to those planning processes. And I think this can't be emphasized enough. In a whole child, thinking is really a strengths-based approach, but I would say in the education field, strengths-based thinking is really new. So it goes without saying that Family Resource Centers play a central role in engaging families. So your basic existence is about connecting families, so that may be obvious, but you have an important role to serve families, but also connect them to the school. But I just want to also underline here that if we go back and think about what family engagement needs to look like for student success, the Family Resource Center is engaging families in one way and can build that trust and help connect families to the school. But there's also a really important need for teachers to gain the skills and understanding of how to work with families. And so we want to make sure that family resource centers don't get turned to like a handoff, that you're the only entity on, or the only person on a school campus that really understands how to work with families and has that relationship with families. So a very important role that you can play on that school team is to advocate for teachers also getting the skills they need to engage every family in their classroom. So really you're doing with, and for sure not for. And it's a tough piece of work, and it's really still new thinking. So there's a great temptation when there isn't successful family engagement at a school to think a family resource center will just solve this. So it's really important for you to bring that expertise to your school site. So then a tough one. So a family resource center should be in full partnership with its school system, with the school district, by contributing to a centralized information system and then an evaluation process that comes out of that system. And this is certainly much easier said than done. But I want to make a point here that it's often information sharing that is the hill that collaborations and partnerships go to die on. So I really want to encourage you that this is really where the partnership is taxed and really asked to do its job. So you would have a big role to play in building this information system, and in that partnership, in the collaboration, making sure that it doesn't devolve into, if only you would give me your information, then I could do my job. And so I really want to, kind of make a point here that where information sharing happens, we are really respecting HIPAA and FERPA and the spirit of those laws to protect your family's privacy and also their dignity. So where information sharing really happens on a student level, an individual student level, is in those multidisciplinary teams. And this is why that team needs to be set up well in terms of its structure, how it functions, and the culture of that team, so that HIPAA and FERPA are protected. And then also the way that team functions and the way the whole school functions around family engagement should be building those relationships and trust with families so that consent is possible when needed. And then I also just want to underline that individual student data sharing information and data about individual students is not the only way that information should be used by that multidisciplinary team and the planning teams. There's also a lot that those teams can do with aggregate information. So just want to really underline that for you all, and you may also be the expert in this, that you bring to your team this knowledge and push for this kind of work. Okay, so the last point I'll make is that, and this really relates to the ones that I was talking about before, that you're really in a deep and intentional partnership with the school as a family resource center. So in these teams, using needs assessments and understanding the progress that you're making or the impact you're having by providing services, supports, and opportunities, and weighing what's working, you build shared goals and set priorities. And this really happens through those teams. And I want to make sure that you understand that there's 3 levels of this kind of partnership. So in a community schools model, these partner collaboratives happen at these 3 levels. So at a policy level, what does the school board decide to back, and how will it, and what kind of funding does it put in? And there should be somebody from the Family Resource Center in a similar position that sits on that policy team. So maybe you're a board member from your organization. And then also a management level team. So this is in the district district leadership, so probably an assistant superintendent in charge of people services would be the lead in this, and then this is where your executive director sits on this team to figure out what do the MOUs say, how many schools are we trying to work in what way, and that kind of thing. And this is really, where the data sharing, that system gets set up there. So all this is just to underline that you're not just partnering at the school while that multidisciplinary team happens at the school site. The Family Resource Center should sit on the team at each of these levels to help make decisions and set up systems, make systems change happen. And I also want to just say here, in that management level, this applies also to family resource centers that are school run. You want to make sure that if you're in charge of that from a school district perspective, that you aren't siloed, that you are on a team at that management level with your other departments. So what applies to outside organizations also applies to district-run family resource centers. Okay, so that's the big overarching systems change and principles for practice in those relationships with family resource centers and schools. I want to, before I go on to funding and other resources, to let you know that the Partnership for Children and Youth and the California Family Resource Association wrote a paper both summarizing and then delving into those 5 principles that I just talked through, and we'll make sure that you have access to that paper. But I also want to encourage you, if you have questions about some of those other areas of expertise, don't hesitate to reach out to me, because I can connect you to trainings and other organizations that can help you with some deeper dives around some of those principles. Okay, so on to funding and other resources. And the reason that I'm covering this is because there's often, we don't want these efforts to partner to die because it seems like there's not enough money. So I want to reiterate that LCFF is a great opportunity to think about partnering or offering more services in a new way. And then also, it's on the same slide because there's only so much that LCFF can do. There's a lot of demands on LCFF. If you're part of a team that's figuring out how to pay for this, I want to alert you to the importance of drawing down the federal funding through Medicaid and Medi-Cal. There's school-based MA, Medi-Cal administrative activities, which reimburses for personnel infrastructure around outreach, enrollment, and connecting students to services. So all the administrative pieces of that work. And then the LEA billing option, which allows school districts to actually bill for medical services, health services. There's been a change to that, so there's some things changing about what school districts can bill for that's opened up to more all students and not those just in special ed, so you should know that. And then EPSDT, which is Children's Medi-Cal, in 2011, specialty mental health services were realigned to counties, and there's additional funding that went along with that. So paying for mental health services, we're hoping that through all these partnerships that education dollars are not used to pay for mental health services when possible. Okay, and so another tool that I want to alert you to is the Teachers for Healthy Kids developed a software program that interacts with CalPADS so that school districts can see in a usable way which of their students are eligible for Medi-Cal and which are enrolled, which have fallen off the rolls, that kind of thing. And so I want to alert you to this tool. A school district would actually work with Teachers for Healthy Kids to use this software, but family resource centers have a really important role to play in helping school districts to use this information and actually connect with those families and connect them to Medi-Cal. So I just want to alert you to that resource. And then also chronic absence, which is one of the indicators through LCFF. This measures attendance, individual student attendance. Different than truancy, you're looking at any absence, whether it's excused or not excused. So truancy would be just not excused. What's different about chronic absence is it also looks at absences when they're also excused. So the research shows that if a student misses 10% or more of a school year, they're in danger of not meeting their academic goals. So if you look at chronic absence in kindergarten and first grade, it predicts grade level or not reading at grade level in the third grade, and then other more global academic delays in fifth grade. So it's a really important measure to look at students, to see what's happening with students early and hopefully intervene early before there are academic impacts to missing school. So I just want to alert you to that and make sure that you understand that and see where there are some tools that your school districts will use to address attendance and chronic absence. And again, to point out that family resource centers have a really important role to play in how school districts use their information around chronic absence and this important opportunity to intervene really early, before truancy is even an issue. And then finally, this is sort of a bit of an outlier, a bit of a stretch, but I wanted to alert you to Funding the Next Generation. It's an initiative that helps communities, if they're working towards having a children's fund, building a children's fund, to get some expertise, help to get a children's fund tax on your local ballot. So I will leave this slide up for a moment, and I'm sure we'll be able to make the PowerPoint available to you. But if your community is organizing around children's budgets and thinking about or has enough of a collaborative developed, you can make use of joining Funding the Next Generation and getting some technical assistance around actually moving a ballot measure for a children's fund. Comes out of the experience in San Francisco and how they built their children's fund. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Ready for questions and answers, or whatever, suggestions too.
Deanna, that was really great information. I know that people were asking if this was going to be available to them, and we are letting them know yes. Also, during the presentation, I want to thank our Strategies 2.0 director out of Children's Bureau in Los Angeles, Lita Albright, has been entering the links that you've been mentioning throughout your presentation. So if people go to their chat box, they can also see the links that are right there for you. I posed a question, kind of curious to how many of the participants on the line today actually have their FRCs located on a school site and how their relationship is with the school. So if they could, maybe even enter some of their successes that they've had and share with the other participants. But definitely we invite you to open up your chat box where it says chat. First of all, you'd have to open up your toolbox by pushing on the red arrow. So that will open it up, and then open up your chat box, and then you can enter any of your comments or questions in that chat box area.
And I do have a few questions, Carrie.
Oh, great. Thanks, Lita.
So one of them was, how easy is it to get an FRC on a school campus?
Yeah, so I would say that all of these partnerships take some really dedicated work, but my experience is that schools are dying for this kind of help. In fact, in December I did a presentation at the California School Board Association's conference with Sac City Unified, and I've never been in a more packed room at that conference, or I had to ask people to step out into the hallway to answer questions after, so the next workshop could come into the room. So I would say that this is a moment when there's a great deal of interest on the school district and school side for family supports, and a great need for the expertise. I think what I was hoping to help people get out of this webinar so that is that understanding of the community schools context and really the school context, so that when you offer to partner, you kind of know where you're headed. You sort of know that other perspective. And so I would say there's a great deal of interest, and one of the things that it's really easy for schools to provide is a co-location, right? So you can show up, you could have this room, that kind of thing, that schools have the facilities, or that's a great place to start. But then I would just really encourage people to help be a resource about creating these multidisciplinary teams. And then if you're very satellited, if all that happens is your staff sits on that team, that's huge compared to not being at the school at all. Right? So if maybe physically having a space at the school happens later, offering to bring that expertise and joining a multidisciplinary team or joining the teacher's student study team, if you can offer that, it's a great window in. And then once the benefits start to arise, then the space will come. The space will come. So I would never say easy, but there's a way to do this that makes it possible.
Okay. And from Julia, she has a comment and a question. She says it's been very hard building a relationship with our school district. We have a funder who funds a school-based family advocate, and principals or school staff are not very nurturing with the parents. And she goes on with her question is, what suggestions do you have to really integrate the school-based family advocate into the school?
Yeah, that's a great question and a really big issue. So school districts and schools all know that they need to do family engagement. If for no other reason, it's now the law under local control funding formula. But I know I'm being recorded, but so I'll try to say it very gently. I think that it is most family resource centers will have the experience that the education field is not set up this way. It's not trained this way. Teachers never have formal training in family engagement. Teacher training is all about content, how you put content in children's heads. So I think that starting with the view that it is the job of the school to do family engagement, but you're going to partner with someone who doesn't have the skills they need to do their job. And this is not a criticism. No one's been trained. It's a whole different way of thinking about family engagement. So it's new. I think the most important first resource that a family resource center can bring to a school site is that understanding of what strengths-based work looks like and what family engagement could be. And if there's a way to get in and say, we'll support you in training teachers, let's say, or in connecting to families, what you want to do is make sure that you're not, I think what's happening is there hasn't been success because people don't have the skill and the framework for doing family engagement from the school side. So there's a failure there that what happens is you go to partner and you're getting a handoff, like take this because I don't know what to do with it. So I think that's kind of what's happening unconsciously, psychologically. And so if there's a way that the first thing you have to offer is to help schools understand how to do strengths-based work, and you can help out, and you can make those connections to families, but you definitely want to get a team established so that you can also then be advocating for teachers to get the training they need and the support they need. And we would really love for Family Resource Centers to join the California Community Schools Network and push this work. It's a lot of the outreach that I do to school districts about community schools is to say, look, you need to get your understanding of family engagement and what the school's role is and what the teacher capacity building is, or that if that foundational work doesn't happen, everything else is strained. And I think that's what you're experiencing. And I would really encourage you to reach out to me. There may be a way that I can offline reach out to the school district that you're trying to work with and come at it from another side and help you negotiate that. It's really probably one of our biggest roadblocks and one of our biggest issues. But if we get that right, if we build that into the partnership and what we're offering in these partnerships, we really can make a huge, I mean, I think it probably goes without saying, and I'd be preaching to the choir, but we could make a huge difference for students and families with just those efforts.
That's interesting, Deanna, because one of the private questions that was sent to me is, are you available to talk to school administrators? I think this might be a frustration that a lot of people have in presenting the message to them.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
And I end up in my role. A lot of school districts come to me asking me how to do community schools, and this is one of the issues that I work on with them right away. So I think you would find a good partner in me. I really want to encourage people to reach out to me to strategize and help think about what your approach is and whether I have a relationship with your school district and can come at it from the other side maybe and help you out.
Wonderful. And Lita, were there more questions and comments?
Yes, a couple more. Sandra, who has been a community counselor for 26 years on her school site, is excited because they've just opened a parent center. And Sandra, what is SST? I'm not exactly sure what that means. But yes, go ahead.
Oh, a student study team? Is that what she's asking about? An SST?
You can type that into the chat box. Sandra. I'm going to assume that's his. Anyway, they're very excited about it. And her big comment was she says that having an admin as a backup truly makes a huge difference. And there was another comment made about space is sometimes an issue, and I'm assuming it meaning space on a school campus to have an FRC, which kind of goes along with another comment I saw earlier about having challenges with the community using a facility that is actually on the school grounds. Like you have issues because the community can't come in during the hours the children are there. Does it shut down early because when the school is closed, the resource center is closed? What are you finding? What are you seeing in that respect?
Yeah, so that's where your team at the management level really comes in. I mean, there's work to do here, and this all gets worked out in MOUs. But that's why this is not just happening at the school level. So what happens at the school brings the questions like that to the management team, and this is why the Family Resource Center needs to have that partnership with the school district and not just be working at schools, but you should be on a team that's figuring out how do we work that out, what happens after school hours, how we use space. All of that, same with sharing information. Our hills that we go to die on, and unless we really build these teams that go, we have this shared purpose. So now this hard work to work through those kinds of questions, that happens in those teams. And that's certainly easier said than done, but that's why the coming forward to a school district with some expertise and to help build that team is really important.
What are you seeing as a timeline for a school that has not been involved with the Resource Center on campus attempting to get involved with the Resource Center? Is there some timeline you see from beginning to end that new organizations might want to have in their mind?
Yeah. Well, I feel like, I think even with community schools, it's always a developmental process. And I think maybe really breaking it down in this way that I've talked about, of starting by trying to even if you're not on site, that you become a part of that team. If that were your first goal, in a school year, let's say the school doesn't even have a team, so you would suggest, like, we can partner and we can help you build a multidisciplinary team, and that would be your first, like, foot in the door. It's such an important piece of infrastructure that I think that if you established that within a school year, that would be a great, huge step up. And maybe think about it in phases in that way. What do you do in a first school year? What do you do in a second school year? And I think if you think about it in that way, in a chunk, a well-functioning multidisciplinary team is going to get you differences for families and how they feel and whether they're served and what happens with students and making sure kids don't fall through the cracks, but also that you get some impact and you get some real support that makes a difference. When that happens, you're going to get a lot more buy-in. So I guess I would just really encourage you to think about it in chunks of work and goals that you have for a school year, and getting those things right, and then moving to the next phase from there. So the long story is you could establish something like that within a year, that relationship within a year. But getting actual space on a site might take longer. So I think, as in with community schools, you're always, it's an ongoing process. But you want to think about it, in phases, or like, what is your goal for with your starting place?
Great.
Sorry, that was sort of an unanswer.
No, that was a great answer. As we travel around the state providing training, we obviously come across a lot of people that work in FRCs, and I think the information that you are presenting today is very, very valuable to them.
Yeah, and I'm making this big deal out of multidisciplinary teams. We would really like to help people connect to that expertise. There's a few organizations and chances across the state to, they're often called cost teams, but there's chances to get training around that. And I would encourage FRCs to, like, even if you're not on one of those teams, to go to a training like that so that you can bring that expertise to a school site. You could make a huge difference.
So I noticed that Lita has put up our strategies website, www.strategiesca.org. I know that one of our consultants, Judy Sherman, has been traveling the state presenting the latest version of the monograph of Vehicles for Change, which is all about FRCs. And I know that that will be made available to people very, very shortly. Lita, I believe on the OCAP website, but also on the Strategies website?
Yes. Actually, okay. We should probably be seeing it early next month on the website.
Okay. And if any of you are familiar with Vehicles for Change, it's a wonderful, there's an initial monograph that was written 20 years ago, and this one now is continuing with the stories and the great work that has been done throughout the state and throughout the country with the use of Family Resource Centers. So it's a very, 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 very valuable resource to all of you.
That sounds great. And then also the paper that we wrote with the California Family Resource Association is called Why Family Resource Centers Matter, and the target audience is school districts, but you could certainly use this piece to to organize your approach to reaching out to the school district in partnership. Am I able to move to my next slide? It looks like I'm frozen. Anyway, we want to offer the website also for joining the California Community Schools Network, where you can reach me. You can also reach me via email, but also if a lot of these resources can be you can connect to these resources through that too.
And the research on why family resources matter, that is a resource that you sent to me, right? So that will be available.
I did, yeah.
Okay, great. So we will also send you that. So you can't move to your next slide?
It's not letting me.
Okay.
Deanna, is that the Community Schools Network?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to enter that into the chat box?
Yeah, I'm going to enter it.
Okay. So was that your final slide? Should I take over at this point?
Yeah, you can take over at that point.
Okay. So I just want to certainly thank Deanna for the great presentation that you gave today, and thank the audience for participating. Your questions were absolutely fantastic. You will have an evaluation that will be sent to you, and we really appreciate it when you complete that and give us your feedback on these. We invite you to go to our website to see what future webinars we will have coming to you, and also what trainings we are currently providing throughout the state. Just really appreciate you, Deanna, for taking your time to give this presentation. I'm willing to bet that several people will be in contact with you, and they are going to want you to speak to their administrators about this very important topic. So it's nice to have an advocate and a voice in the state for the good work that they're doing.
Happy to do it.
Are there any? Oh, so thank you so much. Are there any, before we sign off today, are there any other questions or comments that you would like to put into the chat box? I want to thank
Connie
Rita for...
Okay,
thank you.
Connie has her hand raised. Did you have a question that you wanted to ask, Connie? If you type it into the chat box.
We'll wait for a moment for Connie.
That hand went down pretty quick.
Okay, I get that.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
No, thank you. I've got it. Okay, thank you, Connie. All right, on behalf of Strategies 2.0, I would like to thank all of you for being on this presentation today. As a reminder to you, an evaluation will be sent to you automatically. The resources, as far as the PowerPoint and the resources that were mentioned, will also be uploaded and sent to you within 48 hours. So thank you all, and have a great rest of the week.